Marvel Studios' long-awaited Deadpool and Wolverine is finally here. Does the film deliver everything that the fans want, and just how good is it as a film? That's what we're going to talk about in this review, which will include absolutely no spoilers. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. Ever since Marvel Studios acquired Fox, there was always this perception by a large part of the fan base that Disney and Marvel Studios would not and did not understand Deadpool, that they would not deliver something that is in line with the previous films, and that they would sacrifice many of the elements that made the previous two Deadpool films great. I am here to say that most of this turned out to, of course, be false. When you watch the film for yourself, you are going to notice that in some aspects, they surpass what Fox did with the character of Deadpool. But unfortunately, the Disney politics do get somewhat in the way, and there are a couple of things that do not go past a certain line, for better or for worse, which I will talk about in a bit. So let's rewind this and start at the beginning. When this film started development, we know that it was intended to be a Deadpool film, and then through ongoing conversation, they were able to convince Hugh Jackman to return as Wolverine. Now, it's not a spoiler, and we know that in this is a different Wolverine. He is a multiverse character that is a stand-in for a Wolverine that we're kind of seeing that parallels some of the previous versions we've seen. And honestly, the moment you get introduced to this character and spend a few minutes with him, you're fully in. You understand exactly where he comes from. You understand how he's different yet very same to the previous version of Logan that we've seen, and the film gets going. And this is also something that I think is a little problematic when it comes to Wade, because this film does pick up after the events of the first two Deadpool films. But what they do is pretty much just get past that, and honestly, you could even consider this a variant of Deadpool from the Fox universe, because all that stuff is disregarded quickly, and it's only brought up when they have to have some sort of emotional connection to Wade. That's the only time that he really references the old universe. Outside of that, this could be a wholly new Wade / Deadpool, and it is a whole new Logan. And speaking of the two, since the film is about them, their chemistry is great. The time together that they spend here and how Logan slowly starts to warm up to who Wade is truly great in this film. And it's probably, I would say, the crowning achievement of this film. With that in mind, there are a couple of additional characters that we have seen throughout the marketing, such as Mr. Paradox, who of course is the TVA agent that gets a hold of Wade and tells him, the bigger plot that's unfolding here. And it's not a spoiler to reveal, because they revealed it themselves, that there are new concepts in this film called anchors, and these are characters that are core to their universe. And if the character dies, the universe slowly starts to deteriorate. Well, that comes into play here along with the villain of the film, aka Cassandra Nova, who is the sister of Charles Xavier. Both of them serve their purpose. Mr. Paradox is largely just kind of forgotten, and he isn't really that big of an impact past like the first act. Cassandra Nova, on the other hand, is a little bit more prevalent and present, and definitely the big baddie that they're trying to deal with. But again, she is here to serve a purpose, and the purpose is, I don't want to spoil it, because again, this is a non-spoiler review, but it makes sense in the context of the film and the smaller yet big scale of the film. Now let me backtrack on what I just said and try to explain it in more detail. So a majority of the film is spent in the Void, which of course is the same location that we saw in Loki, and the majority of the film being spent here allows us to understand that this world is not exactly by the books what we've seen before. And since many people will be seeing this world for the first time in this film because they didn't watch Loki, it's going to be interesting to just see how they perceive it and what they make of it, because inherently it's very cheap. You can tell that Marvel Studios and Disney decided to spend more money on getting actors for cameos, appearances, and supporting roles instead of focusing on what they've done with a lot of other films, which is giant bombastic sets, over the top constructions of sets and designs. There's a little of that here, but again, most of this film being spent in this void kind of just blends together, almost like Mad Max in a way. Not that it's bad, but it definitely sticks out because you can tell that some of the CG falls a little bit short, especially some of the stuff that they clearly wanted to keep secret. So instead of shooting on set where we saw them in the desert, they shot on closed sets. And you can tell that there's a couple issues here or there with the CG, but again, it's nothing that actually hurts the bigger plot of the film or the flow of the film. What does hurt the film, in my opinion, is the attention to fan service. I feel like that this film had a list of 50 check marks, and they were like, every one of these, we need the audience to clap or get excited. And they went down the list and checked off each single one. And if they didn't shoot it the first time around, during reshoots, they made sure they added it because they wanted people to be excited every few minutes. It's like how CD Projekt Red talked about developing The Witcher 3. They said from where you stand in the map, any way you go, in the first 15 seconds, something's got to catch your eye, and in the next 30, it's got to convince you to go towards it. And you repeat that constantly. I felt like that in this film from the beginning to the end. It's a lot of fan service, and sometimes this fan service is detrimental to the actual film's quality, where it gets in the way, and you're kind of hoping that they just kind of pull back. And when they pull back, they unfortunately pull back on moments that are just about there, about to hit the same highs of the R-rated insanity that the previous two films do. But you can tell that there is a mandate by Disney and Marvel to just not go past that line, instead to cut it off with some sort of fan-pleasing moment that comes from either another cameo or Wolverine or Wade drop in some sort of classic line that's going to distract you. This happened a number of times that it became very noticeable, not just to me, but to the people I talked to after the film. Now, let me make this clear. This film is a fresh, new revitalization to the MCU. It is so different that it honestly feels like it's not an MCU film. But at the same time, it's not as fresh to the comic book genre as the first Deadpool film was, and I would say it's far superior to the second one. By the end of its runtime, I felt like that the film was a little too safe, in my opinion, and I felt like that they could have gone a little further with many of the jokes and moments. The film definitely has a huge impact on the MCU, but it's not as giant as you might think, or as some people have made it out to be, with their scoops and reports and what they were saying. And I definitely feel like that this film is going to get a lot of people super hyped for it the first opening weekend, the second weekend they see it, or maybe even the third time they see it. But give it time. I definitely feel like that this film will be deconstructed and people will start finding faults in it because there are quite a few. This film, in my opinion, is not as impressive or as redefining to the comic book genre as the first Deadpool film was, because it inherently can't be. But also, it is fresh when it comes to the MCU and does things completely differently and shows us that Disney is willing to take risks, which is something I appreciate. Now, like I've said before, I might not love Thor: Love and Thunder, but I appreciate that they took a risk and did something different. Same with Eternals. While I don't love it, it's in my bottom 5, still, I appreciate that they tried something different. This one sticks the landing better than both of those by miles on miles. But something still feels off, and it feels like it's Disney making a Deadpool film. And I don't know how else I can convey this, but imagine if Disney tried to just copy Deadpool, but they were afraid to go full, right? They were afraid to go fully into it and commit 100% to it, knowing that they could get some backlash from either side. So they pull punches. All that being said, I will say that this is probably my second favorite Deadpool film. I'm going to have to watch it a couple more times. And I don't think it's as good as the first film. It's far superior to the second film, in my opinion. And if I had to put it into the MCU rankings, I would put it somewhere right towards the middle or maybe middle front of the list. But again, that is my own personal rating of the film. And as you guys know, we do not do scores here, but I think you can understand and sort of land on what score I would give this film just by what I said in the last 10 minutes. With all that being said, I am excited to watch this film again. I am more than likely seeing at least twice more in the theaters, and depending on if somebody else wants to go, maybe even a third time. So I definitely got my enjoyment out of it, and I cannot wait to rewatch it and get other people's feedback. So that is it. That is my no spoiler review of Deadpool and Wolverine.